keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so no-go, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host Nick Bernabe here on UCY.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. Really happy to be back, and I'm glad everybody is joining us again. Crazy times out there. The U.S. and I guess therefore the world is on the brink of more war. You may think to yourself, well, this is crazy. Don't we already have enough war going on around the world? I mean, the United States itself is actively bombing between 8 and 12 different countries at any given time. So, you'd think that we've got enough wars going on to keep us busy, but the powers that be, the people in charge, the mainstream media, the political establishments of both parties, they are trying to expand the wars, which is completely stupid, completely insane for many different reasons. Hopefully we'll get to talk about a few of those reasons tonight, because this is a big story, believe me. Like, we're at a crossroads right now. And I'm not talking about Kendall Jenner's Pepsi fucking commercial, right? Because every time some stupid shit like that goes off and it's some social issue and there are people like, oh my God, I can't believe she handed a Pepsi to a cop. And the people are like, well, cops are nice people, so she should be allowed to hand the cop a Pepsi and not be. And of course, it's 2017, so everybody's so damn offended by everything, of course, except for killing people on the other side of the world, that Pepsi had to pull the damn ad down. But anyway, whenever some stupid shit like that goes off, you know there's something else big in the news that isn't being talked about. And, well, maybe it's the fact that we're getting ready to start up a new war with Syria, which may mean that we're going to be fighting Russia and Iran. And these assholes at the same time are trying to start shit with North Korea, who hasn't attacked anybody ever. North Korea has never attacked anybody. North Korea has only existed since World War II. And the only time they fought was when we went over there and invaded them, and they fought us back. That's it. They haven't invaded. They haven't bombed anybody outside of their own country, not even South Korea. So anyway, that being said, we're going to start breaking this shit down. I got my longtime co-host, DB Schwartz, on the call. What's up, man?
Not a lot, man. You're spot on. I had to share that ad, too, because I found it to be funny and ironic and sad at the same time, and it is a distraction, and things are ramping up, and we're going to rapidly approach a point of no return because, once you get involved with WMDs, doesn't matter who used them or for what reason, the fact is that is just wanton murder, essentially, of civilians. There's no possible way you're ever going to hit troops or the people you're trying to fight when you're using stuff that spreads through the air and kills on contact. And it's sheer lunacy. You know, whoever's responsible for that, and I'm sure it's going to come out, but whoever's responsible for that, it's going to be that game changer, because those images are a public relations nightmare. War is always a public relations nightmare. But I mean, like I said, dude, if it can happen over there, it can happen here, it can happen anywhere to anybody.
Really, really frightening images coming out of Syria. I got a little bit of a cough or something. I don't know what's going on here. These images of these people getting poisoned by these chemical weapons are just heartbreaking. The videos went super viral yesterday, and everybody's looking for someone to blame, and everybody is looking for something out of this. I mean, this is really, you can't just watch something like that and say, you know what, we shouldn't do anything about that. It evokes an emotional response, and you see something like that, and you're like, something's got to be done. Something has got to be done. And along comes Donald Trump, propped up by the mainstream media, which supposedly hates him. But again, we've been talking about this for the last several shows. That's all kind of a facade. It's all a distraction. They all pretend like they are keeping Trump accountable. They're acting like the media has been acting like they are the resistance to Donald Trump. The media created Donald Trump. Donald Trump was working for NBC before he became president. I mean, Donald Trump is a creation of the media. They gave him billions and billions of dollars of free media time. They propped him up at the instruction of Hillary Clinton. And he won. Now, maybe that wasn't part of their plan, but he won. They made him. They created him. He won. And now they're pretending like they are the resistance to Donald Trump. They're literally pretending. MSNBC and Huffington Post and all these assholes are going around pretending like they're the resistance. They're not.
Well, someone's super happy because didn't the military just get a $60 billion budget increase?
Yeah, they did. And you don't really see the media criticizing that. I mean, they are criticizing the fact that he cut funding from Meals on Wheels, but I don't really see them criticizing the spending increase.
They're not connecting it, Nick. We're gutting every social service there is to prop up our military and get it ready for war. I hope everybody understands that. Yeah,
I hope so too. And there's a bunch of aspects to this. We're going to be talking basically exclusively about what's going on foreign policy tonight, because last show we had we had an awesome guest on, Austin Casso, Red Giant Union, who's been building a community garden over in Indiana and successfully crowdfunding it and got it all done and all that. Awesome story from Monday. Go check that out if you want to listen to that. Tonight it's a little more of a darker picture here. We're talking about being on the verge of some real shit. Shit that we've been trying to prevent since the moment that we founded this radio show, and the anti-media was born out of skepticism of our foreign policy, and right now we need it more than ever. And again, the media is going around, and the single biggest thing that Trump has done so far. I mean, I just read right before the show, the Republicans are basically giving up on the repeal and replacing Obamacare. It's basically not going to happen in the near future. They're not doing any of the tax stuff that Donald Trump wanted to do, the tax cuts and blah, blah, blah. Like, basically the only thing that Trump has accomplished so far has been to drastically increase the size of the military, and to do that, cut funding from, like DB said, social service stuff, little things here and there, some are bigger things, but overall he's ramping up the military. He's ramping it up.
And he is going to bring jobs back because the military is hiring.
Yeah, military, border patrol, ICE. I mean, talk about big government. I mean, this is the biggest and most violent of it all. This is Donald Trump. Now, before we go into all that, before we do all that, we've got some good news from our special co-host Jake Anderson, who hasn't been on the last few shows because you've been, obviously busy with all the success of getting your movie, getting the crowdfunding successfully accomplished. Jake, welcome back to the show. And before we go into this deep, dark foreign policy stuff, tell us a little bit about your movie, because you haven't really been on the show since you guys finished the crowdfunding campaign. Tell us about that, what you guys got going on, and then we're going to dive into this stuff. Jake, we can't hear you.
Jake's researching for his documentary.
He's still researching. Okay, we'll see if his audio comes back on. I'm sure it will. Anyway, let's just start diving into this stuff. A lot of coverage right now on the anti-media. First of all, let's note the curious timing. Right, we just reported on the site a couple days back about how the U.S. was changing up its strategy in Syria. Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State and former CEO of Exxon, came out and he said, you know what, it's no longer our priority to get rid of Assad, right? And so they're like, okay, we're gonna leave Assad in power. We're gonna let him stay, and we're gonna focus our attention against ISIS, supposedly. Now, of course, that sounds kind of like good news for people who are interested in ending that bloody civil war over there, like myself. I see that kind of news and I'm like, well, that's kind of good. We don't need to be overthrowing governments. People in countries need to decide on their own, and if they can't have a organic internal upheaval or revolution, then who is any foreign power really to step in and say, oh well, we're gonna decide who's gonna win this civil war? I don't know if that's anybody's role. If it is, I don't know if the United States should be filling that role, because we've shown in the past to not be very good at picking and choosing winners, because we tend to pick the bad guys who win. So of course, it's probably not the U.S.'s role to be going into Syria. So I see that news a few days ago, like, okay, this is good news. But then, of course, yesterday, this a chemical attack goes off. And now, Trump gives a press conference this morning saying, okay, well, now I've changed my mind about Syria, which I can only interpret as like, okay, he's now no longer going to let Assad remain in power. Now the agenda is shifting back to exactly the same tack that Obama had, which was Assad has to go. And so now Obama is basically shifting. Okay, now we're starting audio from Jay. Obama, Trump is now shifting into the same exact tactic that Obama was using. Trump and Obama now have pretty much similar foreign policy, which is to get rid of Syria or to get rid of Assad. And this goes directly into conflict with the agenda of Russia. So this puts us on a collision course with Russia. And so that's really what this has been. This is the thing that's been holding the whole thing up for a long time. The reason the U.S. didn't act earlier was because Russia is actually in Syria with lots of military weaponry and infrastructure and even troops.
So it's kind of a weird thing going on, Nick, because like Russia and China are ready to pull BRICS out into the open, out of the investor phase, and go, hey, we have this new currency, it's backed by gold. Even you people in America can buy it. And you can imagine what that's going to do, Nick. I mean, are you going to I think you're already kind of divesting out of the dollar, and I think a lot of people have been. I think a lot of people have been going Bitcoin, and I think a lot of people are going to be happy to go with this new SARA gold-backed bill that's coming around, because a new economic system, it's inevitable. You can't have a monopoly from one tiny minority of people that have proven, like you've said, over thousands of years to be detrimental to the human race and to have held us back and to have wiped out peoples over the earth multiple times in farcical wars just because they don't like certain groups of people. And it's time for that to end, man. The only way it ends is if they lose their power, and their power is money magic, and that's all they got.
Yeah, we can't overlook the financial aspect here, and that's really the main driver behind the Syrian civil war from, the Obama perspective, and the plan for the region dates back to, even before the George W. Bush era and stuff. These guys have been scheming this thing for a long time.
Since they knew there was oil there, Nick.
Yeah, basically. Now here's the thing. Everyone saw the videos. Everyone knows it's a horrible tragedy that happened over there. From what we can tell, it looks really bad. But here's the problem. Everybody and their mothers are attributing this to Assad. But where's the proof? Where's the proof? Like, the one lesson that we've learned over the past 6 months or so is that you're going to see a bunch of outlandish claims. Anybody can say anything. Anybody can say anything, especially the Associated Press. They say something, and then everybody rewrites it and believes it, right? And that's pretty much what's going on here, is that, a couple of media outlets are saying that Assad is responsible for this chemical attack. I'm not saying he's not. But where's the proof? We want to see some proof that Assad is behind this attack before we make any decisions, right? I mean, doesn't that kind of sound like common sense? You'd think, right? It's not just, oh shit, Assad did this, let's go start a war with these people. It's like, wait, let's see your evidence, because you guys just got done. We're still not out of the last mess that you got us in because of this kind of nonsense in Iraq, right? We're still there. In fact, you could make the argument that the reason that we're having this conversation right now is because of what these guys did to get us into Iraq in the first place. So if the media is going to go around, and I say the media here, this is basically everybody, CNN, NBC, Fox News, any big outlet, Washington Post, New York Times, all them, they're all on this narrative of Assad did this, and the time to act is now. We have to figure this out right now. That's basically what they're saying. And you look at the way that this stuff is reported, it's really trying to shove Donald Trump into this direction of, hey, dude, you got to go and you got to start bombing Syria, the Syrian government, because they're bombing people too. They're killing people, so we got to go kill people to make it right, or whatever the logic is there. That's the logic that's being pushed. So again, back to the timing, which is very suspicious. Just several days ago, the U.S. is coming out officially stating that it's no longer going to pursue regime change in Syria, and then a couple days later, it's like, oh my God, the regime is just dropping chemical weapons on its people and killing innocents. So the timing is interesting. The other thing that's very interesting is that there's no motive here. Like there's no reason for Assad to be attacking people in his own cities with chemical weapons. It doesn't make any sense, because strategically speaking, Assad, after the fall of Aleppo, after taking Aleppo back from the rebels, Assad has basically got this thing won. Like, the only real area where Assad isn't going to be asserting control in the next couple months is maybe in the Kurdish regions, where they may establish their own Kurdish sovereign area. But Assad and the Russians basically got the Syrian civil war. They got it won. They won it like a couple of months ago when Aleppo fell. So for us to believe that Assad is now, even though he's pretty much won, now he's just dropping chemical weapons over civilian neighborhoods for what? Like, why? Why would he even have a motive to do this? Like, that is illogical. Yeah. This is where I lose any believability in this story. Right. okay, I would understand it if Assad had a reason. If his government was about to fall.
Yeah, if he was desperate.
Last ditch effort, like shit, drop the chemical weapons. We can't let the city fall, type of thing. Like, okay, maybe that would be that. I would tend to believe that. But this civil war is basically won. Like,
Yep.
Syria, because Russia is backing them and all that. Like, Syria beat the rebels, dude. Like, they beat them. ISIS is on the verge of being done with. The rebels have basically lost. And all of a sudden, there's a chemical attack, and it's like, oh, Assad is just chemical weaponing everybody out here. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't. Let's see if Jake is back. Got his audio working. Jake, you there, dude?
I'm here.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Pretty good. Got my mind going in a million different places as usual, but I would love to talk about the Syrian civil war with you. No, I'm kidding. I'd rather. I don't know what I'd rather do, but yeah. How's it going? I'm a great conversationalist these days.
Oh, you're getting there, dude.
I'm about to be on. I'm gonna have to leave you a little bit early tonight because I'm going on Dread Central to talk more about my documentary. It's just like the never ending. It's like the never ending advertisement for this freaking project I'm working on.
They taking Collins, Jake?
College?
No, are they going to take Collins? Because,
They probably do. It's called Brainwaves. Oh yeah, you should call in and troll me, dude.
Well, you couldn't have said it better.
Call in and accuse Jake of working for the Russians like everyone else is around here.
I'm going to call in, yeah, exactly.
You should accuse Elisa Lam of working for the Russians.
I'm going to connect you to a conspiracy to make conspiracies all Russian, Jake.
Yeah, so Nick, I am working. I mean, this is not in relation to the Syrian civil war, but just to mention it, I am working. It's taking me forever, but I'm going to write an article about the latest Vault 7 release from WikiLeaks, which is called Marble, and which is further delineating how they are able to essentially reverse engineer these algorithms and basically make it factual that a certain hack came from a certain country. And it's as devious as it gets, man. It's I mean, we hate using the tag FF. We hate talking about false flags, but this is showing how the government is very, very capable of creating false flag cyber attacks. And that in confluence with the fact that suddenly Noam Chomsky, of all people, is out talking about false flags. For years, he didn't talk about them. In fact, he denied that 9/11 was one, and he's been notoriously remiss to talk about them. Now, all of a sudden, Noam Chomsky is saying he thinks that Donald Trump could do a false flag. So we have a lot of strange convergences of talk about false flags. False flags, they're starting to become part of the dialogue now. The government can't hide from them anymore.
And and I want to talk about what's going on in Syria right now. I mean, that, for all we know, could have been a false flag as well.
I'm derailing you entirely. I just don't know anything about Syria, so I'm just talking about what I know.
No, you're completely right, man. Like, we're dealing with what may have well been a false flag yesterday in Syria, where there is this gas attack, which has been pinned on the Syrian government, but makes no sense from a strategic standpoint. There's absolutely no reason why the Syrian government would do something like that. And the timing is just so suspicious that it makes you automatically think that it very well may be one. On the topic of Noam Chomsky, it is interesting that he would bring that up. I think false flags are a brilliant way to get people to think a certain way, and people, I think, have used false flags for a very, very long time. People think that the Reichstag was the first one. It wasn't. I mean, people have been using this tactic forever and ever. So, to think that governments around the world aren't using them right now would be very naive. And as you said, man, like the stuff that we're finding out right now from WikiLeaks, it tells us that not only has the CIA like thought about using false flags, they've developed all the technology that you need to carry them out. So do you think they develop all these tools and spend billions and billions of dollars doing it to not use them? And it would be stupid to think that way. But at the same time, you run risk. This is the problem. This is the problem in this industry, man. Like I can't come out every day and be like, oh, this is a false flag, that's a false flag. But you can't. We're at the point now where you can no longer deny that it's highly possible that they're going to be using these kind of tactics.
Yeah, it's not every single one is one, but we're people who study this, they're laying the framework for how ideological opportunism lends itself to this, and this is the age of the modern false flag. This is the age of the false flag, and it's not just the U.S. doing it; it's other countries doing it, and it makes sense. And it's not just in terrorist explosions either; it's with hacking as well. It's with limited hangouts where they hack in and they if something's about to be revealed about themselves, they reveal a smaller target that lets less people get indicted. And it's absolutely absurd to think that false flags are not happening all the time. And is every single terrorist attack we see a false flag? Absolutely not. But do they strategically? But is it a strategic weapon? Yes, it is, and it's absurd that people think it isn't. And it's absurd to think that people think that that's off the books. And the reason here's what drives me nuts is when I ask people, well, why don't it's strategically it's clearly very useful. Why would the government not do it? Oh, because the government wouldn't do that. Are you kidding me? Like that's your excuse? That's your reason? Oh, the government wouldn't do that.
It's unbelievable, dude. It's unbelievable what people say. The government. Here's the thing. There's a couple of things that pissed me off right now. A couple things. And I was writing an article about this, but then I realized I was like halfway done with it, or like I was done with the rough draft. And I realized, you know what? It's 2017, and people are gonna get offended by this. I don't even want to publish and deal with the backlash. Like, you know what?
I'm interested. I'm curious. Tell us about it.
But dude, I mean, a few things are pissing me off. First of all, everybody is offended by Kendall Jenner and this Pepsi ad, which is the dumbest shit ever. And like that is the big story right now. Like that's the big story that people want to talk about. But I mean, the thing is that we're dealing with a situation at this point where we just got done killing 1,000 people last month. The United States bombed 1,000 innocent people last month in Iraq and Syria and killed them. Innocent people, right? And today, everybody, and yesterday, in the U.S., like a bunch of people, a bunch of my own friends that aren't tapped into this propaganda stuff and aware of what's going on, are like, oh my God, I can't believe what's going on in Syria. We have to do something about this. It's unbelievable that they're gassing people. Like that video was heartbreaking. It was terrible. The second thing, we don't know who's responsible for it yet because there hasn't been an investigation. The third thing is last time that they investigated these rebels or these chemical attacks, they wound up attributing them to the rebels. And back in 2013 when Obama was getting ready to go bomb Syria for the exact same reason that we're talking about them trying to bomb Syria again today, they said that these attacks were done by Assad, and then they did the investigation, and then they weren't. And so what pisses me off right now is that we just got done killing 1,000 people last month, innocent. And all of a sudden, everybody is upset that Assad supposedly gassed people and killed not even near that amount. There was like less than 100 people dead. Still really bad, still horrible. But why now? Like, why do people care now? They haven't give a shit for all this time. They've been over there fucking shit up The United States has been over there in that region for a very, very long time. And for the last 8 years, we haven't heard anybody really, have hardly heard anybody giving a shit about any of it. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, Assad did something, now we care. It's like the only time you care is when you guys are trying to start another war, right? And it's only when someone else tells you to.
It's only when it has political value, just like Pizzagate.
When they're saying like, oh, well, when it's us here at the anti-media, like, dude, you know what? Yeah, I had that radio show the other night when I couldn't get any of you guys on. I was by myself. And that whole show was just like, we need to give a shit about the goddamn people we're killing. We're paying for this shit. Me, you, Jake, DB, everybody listening, one way or another, you're probably paying for this shit if you're in the United States. Like, we need to care about the people that we're killing with our money. They're going to all hate us very soon if they don't already hate us right now. But nobody really cares. And then Assad does some shit, supposedly. Again, no evidence that he did it. I lean towards it being not even him, that it was actually the rebels trying to frame him. Like, that's where I'm leaning at this point. But that's regardless. Everybody's like, well, we got to do something about this. We can't let this happen. It's like, well, who's going to invade the United States? We just bombed 1,000 people last month. The United States should be invading the United States and correcting the behavior of our goddamn government.
God, wouldn't that be something?
Jeez.
Wouldn't that be something if during one of these NFL football games, when the jet planes were swarming overhead, they just started dropping bombs and said, well, we're gonna clear out part of the population, everyone. Sorry.
Ah, dude, seriously, right? But I guess this brings me to our top story on the anti-media right now, currently. Is that now everyone in the U.S. is like, oh, well, Assad is using chemical weapons, and that's bad, and we can't allow that to happen, right? And I agree, that is bad, and we shouldn't be allowing that kind of shit to happen. But was it just not a couple months ago when the U.S. government invaded North Dakota, Standing Rock, using chemical weapons, which, by the way, tear gas is a internationally banned chemical weapon. You're not allowed to use that on another country because they consider it a use of chemical weapon, which is basically a war crime. Was it not just a few months ago that the U.S. government was using chemical weapons against our own people in North Dakota, Standing Rock? Thousands of people. Hundreds injured in one night. You guys remember that? The girl got her damn arm nearly blown off. They give a bunch of people hypothermia. They're spraying people with tear gas.
Well, what were they spraying on them? Via, all these drones and low-flying things. I remember Claire went there and got sick for a long time. I know a lot of people I knew that got sick for months and months and months, and they found out they had all kinds of stuff in their blood.
They were saying, I saw a few people, none of this is backed up by any studies or anything, but a few people said they were spraying pesticides out some of these crop dusters really close to the Standing Rock camps, and it was like, the wind was blowing it over and people were, being exposed to like pesticides and shit. I guess that's probably what you're referring to. But yeah, dude, we invaded North Dakota. We used chemical weapons and militarized police forces to forcefully, evict people out of their land so that we could build a huge oil pipeline in our own. We're doing this to our own people in North Dakota, right? Using chemical weapons on them, and then some guy on the other side of the world does it, and it's like, oh my God, we got to do something. We can't allow this to happen. It's like, do we need to slap you upside the head before you realize that your own government is doing this shit to your own people, and you guys aren't giving a shit about that, but you want to go send our military on the other side of the world to go stop a guy from doing that to his people? Again, without evidence that he's actually doing it. Like, it blows my mind the way that people have become so, indifferent. I don't understand it, dude. It really, messes me up. It messes me up in the head thinking about how fucking stupid the majority of people are in the United States. The fact
people are, especially with this last election, the dividing lines have been very clear, and most people do not feel comfortable living in ambiguity. They don't like when things aren't crystal clear. So you have the Trump supporters that, really just refuse to, accept that he's problematic. You have the left, which refuses to accept that the Democratic Party is a criminal syndicate. And all across, you have people that are insisting that, the state is the answer and that we can reform the state. And we're all living in this vast delusion that consumerism, our religion, is a sustainable way of living, even though there's many reasons to believe that psychologically it's unhealthy, environmentally it's unhealthy, in just about every other way. The way we're living is not sustainable, and history will not be kind to us. And instead of trying to reverse course, we're just digging in deeper and coming up with more nuanced excuses.
Yeah, dude. Great point, man. Like, it really is kind of Orwellian, right? The way that, in 1984, the way Orwell kind of described how they would purposely kind of tie up resources by going to perpetual war in the area, kind of like the Middle East, where like all the superpowers would just meet and they'd fight proxy wars, and they would just do it to expend resources so that people had to keep working and keep going to their jobs and paying taxes and all the stuff that we do as a society. I mean, in 1984, that was kind of by design, and they kept the perpetual war going so they can keep people kind of like mindlessly droning on and keep them always in a state of having to produce something. And it kind of is that consumerism thing, and maybe that was the part of the lesson that he was like trying to teach people. On that topic, 200 theaters yesterday aired 1984. Did you guys hear about that?
It's playing by me, and it was sold out.
My favorite headline of the year so far that I personally came up with, it's over on the antimedia.org right now. 200 theaters just screened Orwell's 1984 because 2017 is dystopian as fuck.
Good one, Nick.
Yeah, I give myself a pat on the back. I don't know if it was as popular with the rest of our readers as it was with myself, but yeah, dude, I mean, we're living in an Orwellian nightmare where everybody, and the thing that really bugs me the most about the Trump people, and I talked about this the other night on last Wednesday, is that they think that they're so enlightened and that they're like, oh, the media hates Donald Trump and he's really sticking it to the establishment. You can tell by the way the media hates him.
Yeah, DB thinks that.
The media is building him up on foreign policy. They may be superficially opposed to him and like, oh, his Twitter and, oh, Russia. And of course, that's a wild goose chase. That's not going to amount to anything. The whole Russia narrative, it's not going to amount to anything. But I do want to talk about this Russia narrative because I think I finally figured it out. I finally figured out what the point was, and I think I've kind of known this, and we may have talked about it. Why are they going after this Russia thing? We know that there's not going to be anything that comes of it. We know that Trump's not going to be impeached. But why has the media and the deep state and the establishment gone through such a great length to make it look like Donald Trump is a stooge of Russia, right? Like, we look at it and we say, okay, well, why is this happening? Well, I think I've maybe figured it out. And what it is it's becoming more apparent with what's going on in Syria and the way the media has jumped on this thing with the aggression that I've, you don't see very often, but when there's like a coordinated rollout of a certain narrative, you'll see it like really hit the airwaves like real strong. And that's exactly what's going on right now with this renewed push to get Trump to go and start bombing Syria. Now, I think they tried to do the same thing with Obama, and I think this may be the one foreign policy issue that Obama wouldn't budge on, because I've actually heard leaked tapes from like John Kerry where he talks about, well, we tried to get Obama to do more, but he wouldn't. Now that didn't stop in Libya, but Syria was a different story. I think Obama actually didn't in 2013 he had the chance to go and actually just overthrow the Syrian government, and he didn't, because I think he knew how big of a mess it would end up. The chain reaction that would happen if we went over there and got militarily involved with Syria, with Iran, and more concerning Russia, and to a lesser extent China. There's a whole chain reaction going on there. Now, it was obvious that that Trump was looking to. He ran on a platform that was partially a peace with Russia platform, right? Because you got to remember, back before the election, there was all this stuff going on between the U.S. and Putin and Obama, and they were always at each other's throats. And we helped a regime change over in Ukraine. The Russians wouldn't let a regime change happen in Syria. They've been going at it with proxy wars for a while now. And so when Trump came along and he's running on this kind of peace with Russia platform, these guys knew that they had to lay down some traps for Trump in case he won, and especially once after he did win. They were just laying traps where they could easily just make it look like, Trump isn't going to do something because Russia, he's controlled by Russia. He's controlled by Russia. He's a Russian puppet. Putin is his boyfriend, blah, 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 blah. Like, this whole narrative has been created in order to neutralize Donald Trump's opposition to peace, to anything having to do with going to war with Russia. So, with this chemical attack that we saw playing out with Syria, right? Everyone knows Russia is on the side of the Syrian government. Everyone knows that the U.S. is on the side of the, Syrian rebels. Now, if you watch Trump's press conference earlier today, you'll see that he was saying, look, I've changed my mind about Assad. We may have to go use a military option. Not going to tell you guys if we're going to use it, but we may. Now the media can use this whole Russia narrative against Trump. The deep state can use it against him and say, oh, well, Assad just gassed a bunch of his people. Russia is basically behind it. And, well, Trump's not doing anything about it because he's controlled by Russia, obviously. And, this is how you get to Trump, and this is how you get to his ego, and this is how you make him do things that you want him to do. And this is how these guys are going to get Trump to start a war with Syria. And very likely, I guess it all depends on how certain hands are played. If Trump, if his hand is forced here on Syria and he starts bombing the Syrian government, there's no telling the chain reaction that can happen. There's a chance that we end up directly fighting with Russia and Iran. And there's, China is, of course, the wild card. We don't know where that kind of piece is going to fall on the chessboard, but China is a wild card, and of course they know that they're the up and coming power, and that they have to get through us to get there eventually, one day, or sooner or later. Like, the deep state has trumped Trump. He can't appear weak or soft on Russia at all. Like, if anything happens and Trump doesn't do anything about Syria, well, everyone's going to just say, well, it's because he's a Russian puppet. Well,
it depends what comes out, though, with facts, Nick. If it comes out that a Syrian fighter jet was trying to hit, a rebel anti-aircraft or whatever that was trying to strafe it, and it hit some ammo depot that had a bunch of their sarin gas and it was their stuff, then automatically the tables are turned around again. And now we can go in together, all three, the Syrian government, us, and Russia, against the rebels. See, it could change overnight, and it's very static right now. And that's what's so iffy, and that's what's so freaky about it, too, because anything can happen.
Well, that's the official narrative coming from Russia right now, is the Russians are saying that the Syrian government bombed out a rebel weapons depot, and that's how this gas was leaked out. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't sound very believable either.
Well, it's just the way it was deployed was so random. Why would you just? I mean, you wouldn't just deploy that randomly into a neighborhood against civilians. I mean, unless you were truly trying to create terror against a section of the population that had been against you. But I mean, this is the absolute stupidest possible time. Like you were saying at the beginning, man, it's illogical. It's a surefire way for Assad to lose power if it comes out that he did do it deliberately.
Exactly, man. But these guys have such a grip on this propaganda that I don't know if the facts are ever even going to matter. Like when these initial allegations came out back in 2013 about the rebels getting hit with chemical weapons from the Assad government, we didn't get answers on an investigation for like 6 months or more down the line. Like, you don't find out about this stuff until way later. And so at the beginning, these guys just rely on what they're being told, and they're being told that Assad did this.
Well, but they'll use this as a pretext for war, and this is it's Syria. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're not on the petrodollar. Is there any reason to think that this won't be project for a new American century? Same thing.
Yeah, and Syria is one of the countries that has been in the way of a lot of geopolitical stuff going on in that region. There's the Israeli government doesn't get along with them. They're standing in the way of several pipelines. They're Russia's ally. They're the home base of Russia's Navy in the Mediterranean. I mean, there's a bunch of different reasons why Syria is a place that that they don't want under the sphere of influence of Russia. Basically, is what this comes down to. And and so that's what I guess this is mostly about. It goes back. The Project for a New American Century predates George W. Bush. Has to do with the stuff Bush did in Iraq, and has to do with Iran, and a lot of stuff. I mean, the rabbit hole can go so deep on this. I mean, there's so many different ways to look at this. But all at the same time, we're dealing with North Korea too. And what's going on in North Korea is, I guess it's kind of like China's own version of Syria, right? Except the war hasn't started there yet. But it's kind of like that. It's where you got this leader who is like, inevitably, he's your ally, even though he does some shit that you may not approve of, right?
But he has nukes, though.
Yeah, he has nukes. And, we're looking at this from a perspective of like, okay, if we're China and we got to deal with North Korea, we have no choice. Reluctantly, we have to put up with this asshole. But it's kind of what Russia has to do with with Syria, and it's kind of like what we have to deal with Saudi Arabia too. And it's like, damn, dude, like, that the U.S. government does not want to be aligned with Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's just bad public relations. It looks like shit. You're aligning with a country that's committing war crimes, and that looks bad. It's like us with Israel. Israel is a huge liability. Like, they always make us look like shit because they're always doing really bad things, and we're always funding them doing it. So it makes us look bad.
This is the last desperate dying gasp of the oil and gas industry as we know it. And they're going to and are prepared to start a world war to save their interests. It's ridiculous. We haven't needed oil and gas for at least 20 years. I mean, Elon Musk's solar panel roof panel is coming out in like a month. And once you connect that to your Tesla coil in your garage and in your house, you don't need to be on grid at all anymore for any reason. Not for transportation, not for anything, not even for heating. So the world's about to change like next month. And these guys just cannot, Standard Oil doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, man, exactly. And it's these old ways, and it's not by accident either. I mean, oil is great for the people who are rich already and have the resources to get to it, or the way to secure it. because it's a resource that can be easily controlled. You know, if you only drill it out of several spots in the world, and you got to ship it everywhere, it's easy to control. If we're talking about decentralized power grid system where every house creates its own electricity and everybody's car runs on gas and all of our transportation is delivered through electricity, you know, electric transportation, well then we don't need oil anymore. But then it makes it much harder to control everybody by using fuel, and makes it a lot harder also for a handful of people to get super rich off of everybody consuming electricity when everyone's getting it from their own house from the sun. I mean, well then no one's making money on it. It's just people saving money, and that doesn't interest these super rich oligarchs that are causing all this ruckus around the world in pursuit of, you know, everybody else's resources. And yeah, it's not new. I mean, these empires have been doing this shit. I mean, the British, who we basically picked up, you know, we picked up where they left off. That's what they did. They went around, they messed up a bunch of countries to take their shit. That's all the British were doing. And we're basically doing the same thing, but we make it look nicer, right? We make it seem like, oh, we're giving them democracy and freedom and, you know, and McDonald's and, you know, all that great stuff. And, you know, our bombs if they don't comply. But yeah, we do the same thing the British were doing and what pretty much all the empires before them were doing, but we make it seem like we're doing it in a nicer way. It's pretty funny how we've done that. And they've been pretty good at rebranding the empire and stuff like that into this big, you know, USA and freedom and, you know, we're great and all that.
The cruelty of the British Empire has given way to the subterfuge of the MK Ultra Empire.
Yeah, I think that's a
say that one 5 times fast.
I mean, have we ever in human history had so few ruling so many and the so many having no clue?
No, I think we are unique in that point in history, maybe, where there's just very, 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 very few. Because the world's never been more globalized, right? You know, the world is so globalized now that individual national governments are like secondary compared to like these big corporations, right?
Yeah,
you know, it's kind of like the Dutch East India Company or whatever. I mean, the big corporations are the most sovereign entities in the world. They get to do what they want.
Nick, do you think Apple and Google are behind splitting California away so that they can basically not have to pay any federal income taxes at all?
Possibly, but I don't know. I mean, California is a super high tax, you know, state.
Like those two corporations together are a GDP of a country, and then so why not just buy their own country?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't forget about Facebook. I mean, California is where Facebook, Google, and Apple are located, you know, and so just that alone tells you a little something.
That's your limitless intellectual property corporate behemoths there's no end in sight for them. They'll just swallow up every high-tech company that comes along and they'll grow incessantly. And
that's what they do. And, you know, and so, you know, back to the point I was making here is you know, these supranational corporations are the sovereign groups here. They have more autonomy and immunity than even governments have, you know, and because these corporations, they own many governments. So they do what they want in those places, and if they do get in trouble, like, you know, let's say the bank laundering scheme, the money laundering scheme at HSBC, or, you know, the mortgage fraud crisis that led to the 2008 crash, no heads roll, right? Very, very few heads roll. Like, these huge companies get away with murder and then they get slapped on the wrist with a little fine, or maybe a couple guys go to jail or something. But I mean, they get away with pretty much everything. And we're dominated all over the world by just a handful of super rich. I mean, what was that last figure? Was it like 8? I think it was like, there was like 8 people that owned as much as the lower 50% of the rest of the world. Like the poorest 50%. 8 people, I think, is now what it is that own that much.
That's the $3 billion or 3 billion people that live on $2 a day or less.
Yeah. So, like, you're right, man. I don't know if there has been another time in history where there's been only so few people controlling so much. I feel like that we reached like the peak, the maximal. And all of that stuff is kind of colliding with the internet culture and the access to information age. And we're about to witness some stuff happen over the next 10 years. That's going to be profound. But the profound news right now is that these people who have been grasping at survival, grasping at trying to survive, all these billionaires, keeping their way of life going, they're about to drag us into a war to end all wars, really. If the chain reaction goes off in the worst way possible, we're looking at a major, what would probably eventually be called World War III. Worst case scenario, we're looking at World War III. Best case scenario,
I think we're already in it though. Like if you kind of see this buildup going, I mean, I understand it's not hot between any superpowers yet, and when that does happen, we'll get knocked back a few eons because they'll have to unleash EMPs, to have any hope against us. But all I can say is I can hope that the economy will, even if it has to be forcefully changed, it doesn't result in a complete open conflict. And man, if we have to eat another depression as a country to, I guess, absolve our sins on the global scale, then we're going to have to scale back. We're going to have to go back to victory gardens. We're going to have to get by on public transportation, and we're going to have to get off hyper-capitalism and go to, I think, Nick, we always say anarchy is a great idea, but you have to mix it with agorism, because otherwise you get these roving gangs of super strong dudes that just dominate everyone. So we don't want that. We want a lot of decentralization, and micro self-sufficiency really is the name of the game, I think.
Yeah, dude, those roving gangs are like police. They're like police departments are right now, right?
Well, dude, could you imagine like a Blackwater in every city?
Yeah, dude. And we know we don't need those. We already got those, right? Every city's got a big militarized police presence at this point. We don't need those anymore. But yeah, dude, we're on the doorstep of the most interesting time, I guess, in all of humanity, maybe. At the same time, we're on the doorstep of the most violent time that we've maybe ever seen, because at this point we've got so many advanced weapons that the world can be easily destroyed and permanently, fucked for everybody and all the animals and all the plants on this planet. It could be destroyed. So, we're at a time now where we have access to all this information and all of this technology, and people want to complain about Pepsi advertisements and Kendall Jenner. And so we need to shift our priorities, and we need to think about, like, we're at this point, we need to think about preserving the human race, dude. We could wipe each other out. And this is what Stephen Hawking, and I know I talk about Stephen Hawking way too damn much on this show, but Stephen Hawking expresses these very similar concerns that I have, is that human beings have the very real capability right now wiping the entire place out. And
even the economy could cause mass starvation. Think about that.
Yeah, dude. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate either. It could be something real dumb. And right now it looks like we're heading in a bad direction, and hopefully we can get back. Thank you all for tuning in. Time you're ready. Bye.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.